and welcome back to Wonderworld with the final episode, episode 11, where today I'm going to be building the park's dark ride. So just a quick side note, if you're wondering why my microphone sounds different and probably a bit crap, that's because it does. I actually have lost my other microphone, still need to try and find it, so for this episode we are using my phone, so sorry if the audio sounds a little bit crap. Now, I've wanted to build a dark ride for quite a long time in this game, so this is probably my first one. I think I did kind of like a shooting style western dark ride in the Western Adventure Park series that I did probably over a year ago now. It's probably it's quite a while ago when I did that series, so this is going to be a test for me, I suppose, dark ride wise, because I haven't done one. Well, I wouldn't even class that as a really good, like, actual dark ride. It was more just a kind of a shooting ride that it didn't really have any triggers or anything or any interactive elements. It was just like the shooting in more or less a glorified warehouse. So this will be my first kind of like story narrative driven dark ride. So I'm not expecting it to be anything particularly amazing, but I'm relatively happy with how it's turned out. But yeah, it's the last episode of Wonderworld, which feels very weird to say. This series has been quite a big part of last year and this year for me, so having it come to an end will be very weird, but obviously I've got more projects coming. I've already started quite a few of them, so you'll see those whenever they come out. But yeah, lots of exciting stuff coming, and the tour for this will be next week. Now, as far as it goes for story for this dark ride, it's kind of going to be fitting in with the story of the Intamin coaster you can see just there, and the Mac Big Dipper, which I made in, I think it was episodes 3 and 4. So it's going to be fitting in with those two stories of basically you're going to be just exploring a part of the Wonderworld castle, I suppose. One of my methods for actually building dark rides, as you've just seen there, is basically I'll dump loads of stuff, like all these bookcases and tables and stuff, in a room, and then come back later and actually like theme them and put them in. It's just a way I can easily get a feel for the space I want to create without actually having to commit to anything, when I can just put loads of objects in the space. And as you can see here, the first show scene is kind of like a living room basically, where obviously you'll see the first part of the ride and where the like haunting stuff will start to occur, and then you can see there is the ramp that's actually going out of the show building. It'll be almost as if you're going underneath the castle in like the, I suppose it could be almost like a tomb of places. You'll see in the final ending scenes where this story is going to go, but it's going to be quite cool. You'll definitely see throughout this that most of the time when I'm building the dark ride, it's basically just me testing new things. Like I'm just laying out pieces here for like the different scenes throughout the ride, and it's just basically me testing, seeing what works and what doesn't, and what like can create like a nice scary narrative, I suppose you can say. But I definitely went a little bit overboard with this dark ride. You can see the size of the show building there, that it doesn't actually end up being this big. I actually reduced it quite a bit because I was definitely very over ambitious with it. You can see just here I'm adding the ride cam machine, or whatever you call it, just so that the ride, you actually ride at night, because obviously in Planet Coaster, even when you put a roof over the buildings, light still leaks in. And you can see there I've put enter the queue line at 2 AM, so that the queue line is in darkness as well. And I've added the star cloth to the ceiling, I'm just filling that over now. And then going through here on the actual attraction, because a good thing about dark rides is that, because I'm trying to create the illusion of a trackless one, hence putting the track under the floor, you can create it so it like turns around to look at certain elements and stuff. Now, because the park tour is next week, and at the time of recording this just 2 days afterwards because of the early access to the members, there's a lot of rides we need to name. So the Wild Mouse, I've gone for Wacky Mouse. There's quite a few suggestions of this, and then Roll Guy Kai commented these amazing names for the actual mice of the attraction, like I mentioned for the Blackpool one. So I'd pause it and read those because they are actually really cool. Like they're named after loads of different coasters. And then for the next attractions, for the flat rides, I've gone for Wonderfly, Wonder Spin and Wonder Whirl. I've changed a little bit of the suggestions, but tried to keep it as like 3 coherent names for these attractions, so I thought that worked quite well, a bit like the Wonder Wheel as well on Main Street, so they all fit together quite nicely. And then we move on to the wooden coaster area. We need to name these 2 attractions as well. So the spinning bird thing, I've got Flying Eagle. Quite a lot of suggestions for this one, so I like that name, so that's the one I chose. And for the coaster, I've gone just quite simply for Timber. I thought that was a nice name, quite a lot of people suggested it, and it's just something quite nice and simple that I think the park would have probably gone for when they built this coaster. Now, a lot of this ride is going to be different lighting effects that I've done with triggers, and for this I have to thank my amazing friend Yann BK1608 for this. He's an absolute wizard when it comes to triggers, as you'll probably have seen if you've watched his Simple Park series. I'll link his channel in the description. But he made me literally a 15-minute tutorial on how to do these triggers for the changing light effects and stuff, so thank you so much for making that. I really hope it's improved what this ride would have been before you've showed me how to do this, and in between this and the tour I'll add a few of these around the park as well, so there's some cool nice lighting effects for when that starts. But basically you can slow it down if you want to see how to do it, but I think Yann said he might do a tutorial on it at some point, so I'd go and subscribe to his channel to make sure that you catch that if he ever releases it. But it's basically, you set the triggers up so that you set the light black first, and then the first trigger is activating it, the second trigger is changing the colour from black to something else, and then the last trigger is changing the colour from what the colour was back to black. And if you fade it like 1 or 2 seconds, you get this nice transition effect like you can see there. A lot of when you're creating dark ride, you kind of have to create them as if it's a set, like in a film almost. Like you can imagine you'd be putting like chipboard backings on all of these walls and creating like an actual usable maintenance area behind, which I have done for this one, which is accessible by like doors and stairs, so the maintenance crew can go in and like obviously do, you know, maintenance things to the actual attractions. So it's all about just thinking how it would be created in real life, and that's how you get realism basically. And now I'm just covering the indoor queue with this kind of like older looking wooden floor, and I'll go back later and add some theming to this indoor section. Just covering up the horrible like gate things there, I really don't like them, and then adding more lighting effects like I said earlier. These I think really help just create a more cohesive and like professional looking experience, I suppose, for a dark ride. Like it doesn't look cheap. So these lights actually pulse when whatever they're called, the dark ride vehicle actually comes in the station. So like I was on about earlier, this is kind of like the part of the ride where it goes underneath the castle. So I created this like rock structure as the track goes downwards, and then this section here with the pulsing lights like I mentioned earlier, and these snapping beams as if like, I don't know, the place is falling down on you, I suppose, as you're coming through it, and you see there's a bit of spinning action there as well. I had quite fun making this part of the ride. It's basically like the room is getting smaller the closer you get to the end of it. It's just kind of like a bit of an optical illusion, I suppose, but I had the idea in my head about creating something like this. I thought it'd be quite cool. I mean, it doesn't really fit like kind of underground. It's like you're almost going into some otherworldly part of the castle, but that was the kind of effect I was going for. And then I created these like pulsing lights that are closer together the further you get down the tunnel. And then this part here, I wanted to create like another stop and start section where the actual vehicle would stop, look one way, stop, look the other, as if it's like kind of checking around corners almost, and then a jump scare at the end. So I built this like castle wall structure of kind of like these alcoved parts. Then I had the idea of creating sort of like some entrance structure out of this wood. It kind of reminded me a bit of like 13 Alton Towers, the kind of style of that, but it's just kind of dressing up the outside of the building a little bit more. Then I moved back into the inside to create the second to last show scene. Again, another jump scare with that kind of demon looking thing. I kind of had the idea that that would almost be like some spirit or something when I mentioned earlier in the series about like the man that lives in the castle trying to bring his wife back to life. So it's sort of like the underneath of the castle, it could be like haunted or something, I don't know. It's just about creating like a really interesting story, whether there could be potential for like a really deep lore or something. That was kind of the idea I was going for anyway. And there we have it. That is it for this episode and for this series, which is very weird. 11 weeks has gotten us to this point, so if you've watched all of that, thank you so much. This series has done absolute wonders for the channel. It's nearly got us to 5k, so when we hit that soon, that's going to be amazing. Loads of celebration stuff. I've got 3 different things planned for that, and you'll see those in an announcement video when I hit 5k. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support over this series. It really does mean the world. And I will see you next week in the park tour, just after we look at this dark ride. So thank you so much, and I'll see you then. Here we are back on Main Street then for the last time. Well, not really, because you've got the tour, but yeah, the last building episode. So just next to the Intamin coaster there. Well, there's these massive open stretches of grass, which I will fill in just before the tour with some foliage and stuff. But yeah, just next to the Intamin coaster there, the extension of the castle almost, is this park's dark ride. So comment a name down below for this. I'll reveal the name for this that I've chosen in the actual tour episode. So yeah, that is what I've got for this, the outside of it. I really like the way it interacts with this. I should probably put a fence there actually, just to make sure no one jumps in, goes for a swim in the Intamin Coaster Lake. But yeah, we'll go in the entrance. As you can see, we need to enter this queue at 2 AM, so I'll change that now. There we go. Now at night time. Extra spooky. So this is the indoor queue that I've made. It's quite simple, it's just loads of foliage and rocks and boxes and coffins and stuff everywhere, but I wanted it to be quite simple. The starcloth ceiling as well makes it all that more immersive, like it's actually night inside the building. And then you work your way through the ruins to the actual dark ride station. So we'll hop on for this last POV of the building series. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you in the tour next week. Yeah, that's it. That's all I've got left to say. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you then.